We are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you,
And I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again. Yes, Senator, you know, this morning I got the latest numbers from CDC that 76.4% of Americans now have a chronic disease. This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. In 1950, it was 3%. They had 76.4%. 8 out of 10 of our kids cannot qualify for military service. This is a national security issue. When my uncle was president, we spent zero on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. It's the biggest cause, and it's increasing. And all of the arguments that Republicans and Democrats have about single payer, Obamacare, or the various ways of allocate the health dollars, they're all like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you,
and I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again. You've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end. Senator, I want to point out that in 2021, at the beginning of his administration, President Biden submitted his budget on May. You know what? You made an accusation to me, and I'm going to answer it.
Okay, I appreciate that.
On May 28th, he submitted his budget. So our budget. We're a new administration.
Okay, you can.
And I also want to point out.
I have just 2 minutes left. I asked you a specific.
I want to point out something, Senator. You presided here, I think, for 32 years. You presided over the destruction of the health of the American people.
Well,
our people are now the sickest people in the world.
Seriously,
because you have not done your job.
2000, Tony Fauci flew out to Seattle, Washington, and he had this meeting, this very strange meeting in Bill Gates' $85 million mansion on the banks of Lake Washington. And Gates brought him into his library, and he said, I want to propose a partnership with you. And the partnership was to try to vaccinate all of humanity. And they ended up calling that, in 2009, they rechristened the program the Decade of Vaccines. Gates went to the UN and gave this speech in which he promised to vaccinate essentially all of humanity with a multiple battery of vaccines by 2020. And he began using his philanthropy to create a series of other quasi-governmental agencies, CEPI, Gavi, and a number of others, and then to gain control of the WHO. And what he calls what he does philanthro-capitalism. It's not about philanthropy. It's about enriching the capitalists. What he does is he buys, and he does this in a number of areas I show in the book. He does it with food. He did it with the core curriculum. He buys large stakes in companies that could benefit from a change in governmental policies, a worldwide change in governmental policies. So he owns stakes, very, very large stakes, in almost all the big pharmaceutical companies. Then he gives essentially about $1 billion to WHO every year, but through Rotary International, through Gavi, through CEPI, and through the Gates Foundation. But they're sort of, the cumulative is even larger than the US, which is the second biggest. That gives him control over WHO's policy. So there, the analysis of WHO say there is nothing that goes through WHO that is not vetted first by the Gates Foundation.